Gentlemen, thanks for joining me for another news story to cover. This is actually a little bit more of an opinion piece. This is looks like we lost Jeff. I don't think he likes this already. Oh, there he's back. We'll keep going. This
Sorry.
was an opinion piece
You
from
already
Peter
offended him. He
Zeihan.
didn't even know what it is.
Yeah. Peter Zeihan's a pretty famous geopolitical international relations commentator. And Peter was making the point that there's a triple challenge. What do you call it? A three-headed dragon for New York real estate. I guess three-headed dragon sounds more ominous or scary or something like that. But the three heads he pointed out was one, demographics. The American Northeast is the oldest and fastest aging population in the U.S. New Yorkers are retiring and they're moving to warmer and cheaper climates. So that's really kind of driving down demand in New York. Then he pointed out to remote work is leading employees relocating to other areas, including Florida, and in some cases just commuting a few times a month. With 8% of the population, New York paying 90% of the taxes, any relocation of upper wage earners is a real problem for that government in terms of the fiscal hit they're taking. And then the third head of the dragon he was pointing out to was the problem of foreigners land banking, basically. Foreigners, as things get more dangerous or more unrest, we've talked about Chinese money laundering separately into real estate, but foreigners are buying apartments like in those pencil skyscrapers that they never live in just to get the money out. And that creates the problem of distorting the real estate market in that you have foreigners who, yeah, they bought the property, but they're not living there, so they're not paying all the taxes, the retail taxes, the income taxes into the system. So he pointed these as three real problems for the private sector and government business model in New York. Didn't offer any solutions, but he said, hey, these are three problems. I think personally, I think he's got a point in terms of these are problems. We've definitely seen them. Some thoughts you guys have. I got some of my own thoughts on this one.
Is this like another like hashtag San Francisco type thing? Like, or is this a are we looking at are we discussing mass migration? I mean, I think to a large degree we are.
I
I
think
you know
it's
I
I think even in the video he might have made that allusion and said it's not as bad or whatnot. But that was going to be one of my points that he did not bring up public policy. I don't think it's a crazy coincidence that some of the areas with poor public policy that have seen increases in crime, a drop in quality of life, whether you're looking at San Francisco or New York or Chicago or Seattle, are also markets that are having these problems, while places like Miami that actually have a pretty good quality of life and have managed those problems are seeing experience upticks. I mean, we like the
That's
Savannah Charleston area. So I think public policy is, I'd say that's actually another head to this dragon, but one that's easier to fix than say demographics.
yeah.
But your guys'
Look,
thoughts.
I mean, there's one thing that you can't do in New York City, and that's kind of change the weather. So, I mean, people found out that they just like warm weather. They like beaches. I mean, it's nice not to be inside in the winter and to kind of enjoy the space. I mean, maybe a solution is they put a beach on the Hudson. I mean, no one will go, but you could always do that. I mean, that'd be very
and
interesting.
isn't there a chemical cleanup requirement for that?
Well, I mean, I
Or
remember Seinfeld where Kramer was swimming in it. He came out and like he was like a mutant. So I
yeah,
was like, I don't know if I'd go to the beach, but I mean, hey, you might put one in. Maybe it
You know,
keeps some
I
people.
I'm gonna bang the drum on public policy because I think especially when you talk about that like 8% paying 90% of the taxes, that 8%. Um, if they want to hang out in Miami, they can fly there. If they want to be somewhere else, and they're going back and forth. And I think that was really one of the issues here is that for those people that had multiple houses or multiple properties or already spending one time in one area and one time in another, once things got to the point where, you know what, the quality of life is just better in X and Y. They're like, well, I'm already spending some time in Miami. I'll just make that permanent. For the group that's paying most of the taxes, they have so much mobility that if you make it so life isn't that enjoyable, they're gone. And,
well,
and I think the good news there is that is fixable. You can make it so it's you want to spend more time where there's the Broadway shows and the best restaurants and everything. If you make it so people aren't seeing so much of the downside in their face, that they're not scared to death to ride the subway. Not that the top eight,
I
top
think you
1% is riding the subway.
you hit a couple things, and actually it's like why not summer in the Northeast where it's still warm but a little cooler? Why not winter for 6 months and 5 days and in Florida where you're paying less taxes, and oh, by the way, you also have some of the best doctors in the world. We were discussing healthcare in a recent video, but let's be honest, healthcare tourism is a real thing. So if you can spend your winter, get all of your healthcare items taken care of in a tax-free state, wouldn't you do it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, this would be my criticism of Peter, is I think this is the big point he was missing on some of this, is that if you can fix your public policy and get your quality of life back to where it was with, Bloomberg or Giuliani, and I'm not pitching either of those guys. I'm just pitching that the city had a higher quality of life for whatever reason while they were there. If I think if New York can get back to cleaning up the streets and making it a place where it's just safer, it's cleaner, turn back the clock a little bit, a lot of these people will stay or be there or make it more their permanent residence, and then do exactly that. They'll when it's more comfortable to be in Miami, they'll be in Miami because that's what they were doing before the quality of life went down. The other thing I'm going to
Oh,
bring up is on the whole pencil skyscraper thing, just clamp down on the money laundering. Just I think that will start to address building these, like, ridiculous buildings that nobody lives in, that are just there for foreigners to park their money, and does distort the city's economy by having people who aren't paying the taxes, aren't part of the city life, who are just parking money. I think if you actually start treating money laundering seriously, and say, especially for stuff that's linked to crime and whatnot, we just don't want it. That'll take care of that problem in large
Or
degree.
or they figure out who the owners are and force them to live there in some way, shape, or form, which is probably what New York City will do. And they'll make if they don't, they'll pay higher taxes.
I was gonna
Um,
say, make it a tax, just
I mean, it's
penalize, and it's tax revenue. They don't have to live there. It's kind of what you want anyway. So I mean, they'd be happy to properly pay the tax and keep leaving it vacant. It
yeah,
accomplishes the same goal.
Great.
kind
I,
of.
I think
I'm not
I
saying it's a
yeah.
good solution.
No, I think it's a
It
great
is our
solution.
solution.
I personally think we have fixed the problem, gentlemen. I think we've
Yeah,
come up with this. Now we'll see if there's much interest in actually implementing these solutions, because there hasn't been a ton. But I
so
do think that's kind of a path forward. In the meantime, we will keep doing investments in those areas where people are fleeing to, and have higher quality of life, have better demographic data behind them. We're happy to do stuff in the Miami area and the Savannah Charleston area, and in other areas that are benefiting from these mistakes.